Hello everybody, a lot of you aren't subscribed yet. I think you should subscribe, because that way you won't miss any videos, and when we get to 1,000, Lee House face review is coming. So subscribe, and now on to the video. Hi everybody, so today let's talk about what you should be afraid of in Sweden. Specifically in this video we're going to be talking nature. Like, what should you be afraid of when you're out on a hike, driving, camping, or doing anything in nature? First off, let's talk about some animals. And most people are afraid of snakes. Yes, there are snakes in Sweden. 3 main types of snakes, and only one is venomous. And this is the common European viper. Now, this viper is not as poisonous as you think. The level of poison is about the same as a wasp sting. Not a problem for you and me, but it will be a problem if you happen to be allergic to the venom. Snakes like to hang out around tall grass, piles of rocks, and underneath bushes. Just make sure that you look where you're going, and the most vulnerable categories are small dogs and children, and also small cats. You don't see them often, but when you do, just give them like 2 meters distance and you'll be fine. Now, there's also this snake, and that snake is not venomous. You don't have to worry about being poisoned by it. But it will bite if threatened, but it's generally not dangerous and tends to avoid humans. So respect it, but you don't have to be afraid. As far as I know, there aren't any dangerous insects in Sweden. There's a lot of spiders, there is wasps, and there's hornets, and there's bees. Now, you should be fine with any of those, again, unless you're allergic. The wasps, hornets, and bees, they're like any wasp, hornets, and bees in any country. Just respect them, keep your distance, and they should be fine. Now, wasps and hornets do like to build houses in garages and basements and attics and around people's house, especially if you live in the countryside. Just call Anti-Cimex, which is a company that deals with that kind of stuff, and don't try to deal with it yourself, unless you really enjoy being stung. Now let's get into a little bigger category of animals. The first bigger animal you should be a little bit wary of are foxes and badgers. Because they won't hurt you, they will avoid you 90% of the time, but if they have rabies, then you don't want to get bit. Just if you see one and it's not running away from you, then you might want to consider staying near your car or keeping your distance. Foxes and badgers will never attack a human unless they are sick with rabies. The next step up, deer. You want to keep your distance from deer. They're gonna be very scared of humans all the time, but if they become cornered and don't feel they cannot escape, they will turn around and fight. They will use their front paws, their front hoofs to kick with, and these kicks can be hard enough to break bones. Like I said, if they have the opportunity to run away, they will. And I've seen them hundreds of times in the wild, and not one of them has tried to attack me. Just be aware, if they feel cornered, they can kick pretty hard. The next step up in weight are wild boar. Yes, the wild pigs of the forest. So these guys can be very dangerous. I have seen them a couple of times in the wild myself, and I think they're a bit scary. They can bite and they have tusks which they can gore with. And as with any other animal, if they have the chance to run away from us, they will. But when it's breeding season and when they have kids, just keep a big amount of distance. or even turn around when you see them and start walking in the other direction. They're mostly dangerous actually for cars. Lots of these bigger animals like deer, wild boar and moose, mostly dangerous for car crashes. Now, moose, the next one on the list. These are the biggest animals walking around in Sweden, and that also makes them pretty dangerous. The most animal kills in Sweden are because of moose. People have car crashes with them. Now, if you meet them in the wild, they have very bad vision, but very good ears. If they hear you, they will run away. But again, during breeding season and when they have young, they will defend themselves. Again, by kicking, just like the deer. But as you can imagine, because these guys are so much bigger, they are gonna kick a lot harder, and they have actually killed people. Now, to avoid that, if one ever charges at you, you start running circles around the tree. That's the best way. You know that old child's game, Keep Away, where like you're trying to get to each other, but you keep running circles around the kitchen table? You do that with the moose. After a while, they give up and leave. But if you feel brave, you can also stand there, make yourself look really big, and shout from the top of your lungs. Hey! And just don't back off. That way the moose is like, oh hey, this guy is not intimidated by me, I better back off. And this is a tactic you could do, although risky. It's better, just with any other animal, to keep your distance. Now, of course, the more northern you go, you will also start running into reindeer. Reindeer are basically the same as deer, you just have to keep your distance and make sure they're not cornered. They will kick if they're cornered. And even in the north, you will also be able to find bears. Yes, these are pretty dangerous too. If you ever meet one in the forest, you want to slowly start walking backward. And just let them know you're there, make a lot of noise while you're walking around, and they will also try to avoid you. If a bear ever charges you with their ears in their neck, it's a defensive charge. That means they feel threatened. And in that case, you can stand your ground, make yourself big, shout at them, and then they should back off. But if a bear ever charges you with their ears facing forward, looking at you, it's a predatory attack. They see you as a prey, and in that case, you have to fight for your life. Playing dead. But the best advice for bears is just to make a lot of noise while you're hiking around, so they get a warning long before you get to them that they need to move because you're coming. Because even bears don't really like being around human beings. The next animal people think they should be afraid of are wolves. You don't have to be afraid of a wolf. Wolves generally never attack people. There's been a few occasions, but that's when they have been starving or they have been cornered or anything like that. Wolves are super afraid of humans. They will do anything to avoid you. Now, if you ever come face to face to a wolf, just let them know you're there by making a lot of noise and slowly back up. Now, with wolves, because they're pack animals, you also want to make sure that if you see one in front of you, that there aren't like others trying to give you an ambush from the sides. But I doubt they will ever do that, because that's hunting behavior and wolves do not hunt humans. Now for the things that you actually have to be afraid of a lot more than the animals in the forest is getting lost. Yes, Sweden is a super big country with a lot of forest, and the forest is big. It's easy to get lost if you don't pay attention. So while you're hiking, you want to keep an eye out for blazes. These will show you the way along a route. And make sure you see the next blaze before you leave the last blaze. That way you can't get lost. Now, another thing you can do is before you start going on a hike or a walk, make sure that you've looked at a map of the area, and at this parking lot there usually is a map of the area. Take a picture of it with your phone. That way you can maybe find your way back if you get lost. The best thing to do when you actually do get lost, even if you think, oh, I've only been lost for half an hour, stay put and call the emergency services. The farther you walk while you're lost, the harder it's going to be for them to find you. But if you stay in one place and call emergency services, it's going to be a lot easier for them to find you. Now, if you get lost in a location where there is no coverage and you cannot use your phone, the best thing is to walk in a straight line towards whatever direction. Preferably in the direction you came from. But walking in a straight line usually means that you will cross a road at some point. Most of the Swedish forest, especially in the south where I live, is surrounded by roads. And if you can get yourself to a road, then it's easier for people to find you and for you to find coverage for your phone. The next thing that can be a little bit dangerous is foraging for the wrong food. If you want to go into the forest and pick mushrooms or berries, that's fine. That's a Swedish pastime. A lot of people do that. There are a lot of good foods in the forest to gather. But make sure you're picking and eating the right ones. It is really easy to pick the wrong mushroom or the wrong berry and make yourself sick. So here's a tip, especially for mushrooms. Have a book that you can identify the mushrooms with. Then also look up online, and if those two agree that the mushroom you're holding is something you can eat, only then eat it. I personally would love to put a third option in there, and is to take the mushroom to somebody that knows if that's correct or not, especially an older Swedish person that has been doing this all their life. So have at least two, preferably three things verifying that you're picking and eating the correct mushroom. Now, another thing that I can think of in Sweden that can be dangerous is if you are hiking or walking, and especially if you go off the path. Sweden is a hilly, rocky country. It is possible for people to get stuck with their legs between rocks, or even fall down into a small cave, or fall down off of a cliff. There are hikes that are a little bit more dangerous with loose rock and gravel, and people can lose their footing. Just use hiking sticks while walking around and feel the stability of the floor before you actually start walking there. It's a very good way to do it. Another thing that can help you during hikes is to let people know where you're going and let them know when you're supposed to be back. And then when you get back, you text them a message, hey, I'm finally home, everything's fine. Because if they know that you haven't come back after that time and they haven't received a message, then they know that they need to start contacting somebody and go out searching for you. And one of the last things, if you do go out in the forest and you happen to get hurt, like breaking your leg or spraining an ankle, and you get hurt in such a way that you cannot walk anymore, or maybe your hiking partner cannot walk anymore, one of the biggest problems is hypothermia. People get cold. If you cannot walk anymore, you're probably sitting down or laying on the floor. Make sure to keep yourself warm. The ground will take a lot more heat from your body than the air does. So if somebody's laying on the ground, take your jacket, keep them warm, have an emergency blanket that you can put underneath them, or maybe put them in a car seat, let them sit on a tree stump or anything like that. Get them off of the ground. and that way you make sure they don't get undercooled. Especially during the winter, make sure you're wearing layers. Don't just have one really warm jacket. That is gonna cause problems, especially if you're gonna be out there for multiple hours during the winter. You wanna wear several layers. Like when you start walking around and you get warm, you wanna remove one layer. And if you're still getting warm, you wanna remove another layer. And then if you're cold again, you can put on a new layer. Why is this? Because if you are out there in freezing temperatures and you start sweating, that sweat will freeze to your body and you will start cooling down even faster. You don't want to sweat underneath layers of thick clothing. You want to be able to, when you're warm, take off a layer and then keep walking in a nice comfortable temperature without sweating. Now, I hope this advice helps you. If you want some more information, I invite you to Google and do some research. It's always good to do a lot of research before you go out and hike into nature, especially if you're doing it for several days. Please stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time. Bye! YouTube says you might enjoy this video. Go ahead and give it a try.